So, what if everything you perceive, the ground, the air, everyone, what if it isn't fundamental reality? What if it's all just like an incredibly sophisticated program?
Hmm. It definitely sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But it's not really a new idea. Variations have been kicked around for centuries. You find it woven into philosophy, ancient stuff, right up to, well, modern science.
Right, and that's exactly where we're headed in this deep dive. We've been digging through this really fascinating set of sources, your notes, some pretty dense academic papers, articles, all of them grappling with this uh, provocative idea that our universe, it might just be a simulation.
Yeah, and the goal here really is to pull out the core insights from all that material. We want to get a handle on the main arguments for the simulation hypothesis, look at potential clues maybe hidden in the fabric of reality itself, and, well, explore the implications, which are pretty mind-bending if it turns out we are living in code.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The sources, they make it really clear this didn't just like pop up with video games. It goes way back.
Oh, absolutely. You can definitely see echoes in, say, Plato's allegory of the cave. People mistaking shadows for the real thing.
Yeah.
Or in Eastern thought, like the Hindu and Buddhist concept of Maya, often
Right.
translated as illusion, the idea that the world we see isn't, the ultimate reality.
Right, this sense that maybe our senses are fooling us or just showing a limited slice of what's really there. But the modern version, the one that's really got physicists and philosophers talking, that comes from Nick Bostrom back in 2003.
Exactly. Bostrom came at it from a probabilistic angle.
Mhm.
The sources really lay out his argument pretty clearly. It's built on three possibilities he sees for any really advanced civilization, what he calls post-human civilizations,
Yeah.
ones with, like, unbelievable computing power.
Okay, so walk us through those three possibilities.
So first possibility, civilizations just never get there. They don't reach that supercomputing stage. Maybe they wipe themselves out or collapse, something like that.
Okay, plausible. Number two.
Second, they do get there. They reach that insane level of tech, but for whatever reason, they just choose not to run simulations of their past, their ancestral histories.
Maybe ethical reasons, or they just aren't interested.
Could be. And then the third one, this is where, from Bostrom's view, it gets really interesting.
Right.
The third possibility is that they do reach that level, and critically, they do decide to run simulations, lots and lots of simulations of their ancestors. And the key insight Bostrom pulls from this, the point the sources really hammer home, is that if that third possibility is true, if advanced civilizations are running these ancestor simulations, then the sheer number of conscious minds living inside those simulations would, in all likelihood, just vastly, vastly outnumber the minds in the original single base reality.
Wow, okay. So the logical conclusion then, if you buy his premises,
Yeah.
is that it's just statistically much more likely that we are in one of the many simulations rather than the one rare base reality.
Precisely. That's the core probabilistic punch of his argument, as it's presented. If simulations are possible and actually get run, then most observers like us, we'd find ourselves inside one.
Okay, that's the philosophical, the logical argument. But what about the universe itself? Does physics give us any hints? Do the laws of nature look, well, computed?
Yeah, this is one of the most intriguing angles the sources get into. One idea that keeps popping up is this concept of a digital resolution limit.
Like pixels on a screen, but for reality itself.
Exactly like that. What if space and time aren't infinitely smooth, infinitely divisible? What if, way down at the bottom, there are these irreducible units, the pixels of reality? The sources point to things like the Planck length and Planck time, incredibly tiny scales, right? Like 10 meters, 10 euroseconds, way beyond anything we can experience directly. But the thought is, could these fundamental units be the sort of minimum resolution of our simulated reality?
Hmm. The idea that reality might be grainy, fundamentally discrete, that does feel a bit suspicious, doesn't it? Like something built on a grid.
It does, yeah. And then you've got the whole weirdness of quantum mechanics. The sources really highlight its fundamentally probabilistic nature. Particles don't seem to have definite properties like position or momentum until you actually measure them.
They're in that fuzzy state, the superposition, until you look.
Right. And think about it like a video game. Maybe it only fully renders the details of something far away when your character actually gets close enough to interact with it. This probabilistic behavior in quantum mechanics where things aren't fixed until observed, forcing a collapse into a state, well, that looks an awful lot like a computational shortcut, doesn't it? The kind of efficiency you'd expect in a massive simulation trying to save on processing power.
That connection is really striking. quantum weirdness as potentially a feature of computational efficiency. That's a key takeaway from the material.
Yeah, it suggests the universe might not be, fully deterministic and pre-calculated down to the last atom. Maybe it's computed as needed, on demand, basically, when an observation happens.
And speaking of computation, the sources also really emphasize the deep, almost spooky relationship between the universe and mathematics. The fact that math isn't just a tool we invented to describe things, but it seems to be like baked into the structure of reality itself.
That's a huge point. People like Max Tegmark have pushed this idea hard. The concept isn't just that math describes the universe well, but that the universe fundamentally is a mathematical structure, a kind of formal system running itself according to mathematical rules.
So reality is like an equation working itself out.
In a sense, yeah, it connects to ideas like digital physics, the universe being fundamentally computable, or things like cellular automata, where you have incredibly simple rules, like in Conway's Game of Life, but applying them over and over generates staggering complexity.
Right.
The insight there is that maybe the universe's complexity is emergent. It arises from simple underlying computational rules rather than needing every single detail programmed from the top down.
Okay, so if it is a simulation, could we ever spot, like, a bug? A glitch in the matrix, so to speak?
Huh. Well, it's fun to speculate, right? And the sources definitely explore this. If there are computational limits, or maybe rendering shortcuts being used, we might perceive those as anomalies, things that don't quite fit our standard physics models.
What sort of anomalies are we talking about?
Well, people have suggested looking at patterns in the cosmic microwave background radiation, or maybe weird directional effects in the highest energy cosmic rays hitting Earth. Could those, theoretically, be artifacts? Maybe related to the simulation's boundaries or how it handles extreme scales, even the speed of light itself. Maybe it's not just a physical constant, but like a fundamental data transfer speed limit for the simulation's processor.
That's interesting. And the sources mentioned that Fermilab proposal from 2012, didn't they? To actually look for signs of space being pixelated?
Yeah, that's right. They suggested looking for specific diffraction patterns in high-energy cosmic rays. Patterns that might only show up if space has a discrete grid-like structure instead of being perfectly smooth. That's a fascinating case of scientists actually designing an experiment to test for potential glitches suggested by the simulation idea.
Okay, so we've got the core logic, potential hints in physics, the mathematical nature of it all, and maybe even ways to spot glitches. But what about us? What does this do to the idea of consciousness if our reality is simulated?
Yeah. This is where it gets really personal and the philosophical side deepens. If the simulation hypothesis holds any water, it strongly suggests consciousness might not need biology. It might not be tied only to wet, squishy brains. Minds could potentially emerge from any sufficiently complex computational process.
You're saying if the simulation is detailed enough, we simulated beings could actually be conscious?
Yeah.
Genuinely experiencing things?
That's a core implication the material really brings out.
Yes.
And it swings open the door to another really profound idea. What about advanced AI? If we develop AI within this simulation, could it become self-aware too?
Whoa.
The sources touch on things like integrated information theory, IIT, which basically suggests consciousness correlates with how much information is integrated, how complex the system is, regardless of whether it's made of neurons or silica.
So consciousness isn't just a carbon-based life thing. That's,
Yeah,
unsettling, but also really fascinating.
exactly. It forces us to ask really fundamental questions about what a mind even is. And these questions, they just spill over into even bigger philosophical and ethical territory.
Like, who built the simulation? Who are the simulators? What do they want? Are they washing us? Interacting?
Yeah, and you can't help but notice how these questions echo, theological concepts, simulators as gods, the simulation's rules as karma or fate, the idea of a simulation rebooting. Maybe that's like rebirth or cycles of existence.
It totally reframes everything, doesn't it? Purpose, free will, our place in the universe. And the ethical dimensions are just enormous.
They really are. I mean, if simulated beings can feel joy or suffer, what responsibility do we have towards any digital minds we might create? Does simulated sentience deserve rights? And how do you even search for meaning if your entire reality might just be lines of code? Big questions.
So, okay, we've taken quite a journey here. Started with ancient ideas, went through Bostrom's modern logic, sifted through physics for clues, looked at the universe's mathy nature, searched for glitches. and landed on these huge questions about consciousness and meaning.
Yeah, we've really unpacked the core arguments from the sources, haven't we? The possibility that reality is discrete, pixelated,
Yeah.
quantum behavior is maybe an optimization trick, math as the universe's operating system, consciousness not needing biology.
And it all circles back to those really fundamental, mind-bending questions the sources raise.
Mm.
Are we living inside code? Is the universe a giant computer? And if it is, what does that make us?
It's definitely a lot to think about. The sources certainly give you plenty to chew on.
They really do. They leave you with this lingering thought, don't they? That maybe the most mundane moment of your day is actually happening inside something extraordinary, something potentially computed. What if the ultimate frontier isn't exploring outer space, but exploring the nature of the simulation itself from the inside?
Certainly makes you look at the world around you a bit differently.
It absolutely does.